Hello and welcome to this year's town meeting preview. This is a cable TV show that we tape each year in the week prior to our annual town meeting, where we have an opportunity to kind of go over everything that's in the warrant, which is basically our agenda for our annual town meeting. And the annual town meeting this year will be held on Monday, April 7th, starting at 7 p.m., and that will be at the Abington High School Middle School Auditorium. We do ask those of you who'd like to attend to please arrive at least 20 minutes before 7, so you have time to check in with the town clerk's office and to find a seat in our really nice auditorium. Auditorium seats over 700 people, so there should be plenty of room for everyone. With me today is our town manager, Scott Lambiase. Welcome aboard, Scott.
Thank you, sir.
We have on this warrant 26 articles. Many of the articles are articles we see each and every year. There are several articles, however, that are unique to this year. Some decisions, all the things on this warrant have to be approved by the registered voters of Abington. So we're hoping we do get a quorum early so we can get started quickly. But if you don't mind, I'd like to kind of get right into it, and feel free to interject whenever you'd like. So we're starting off this year with what we call our consent agenda. The consent agenda is actually a collection of 4, 5, 6 articles that show up every year in the warrant. They don't get any debate, they're rather routine, and instead of having 5 separate votes, in this case we're going to have one vote to approve Articles 1 to 5. And Article 1 is just the annual approval of the annual funding for student transportation. That is for $17,490 to pay for Abington residents, Abington students, who are transported by school bus to other schools outside of Abington, which are things like the Norfolk Aggie School in Walpole and the Southeastern Regional VOTEC in Southeastern. So that is an annual request and always approved without debate because that's just a need that we have to fill. Article 2, health imperative funding. It's a $5,000 article where the town invests in this local group that does a lot of great work with survivors of sexual assault and domestic violence. It benefits Abington residents, so it's something that our town has always supported and will continue to do so with a vote on the consent agenda. Article 3 and 4. 3 is funding for $2,500 for the Arc of the South Shore. The Arc of the South Shore is a great service provided to Abington residents with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Again, we approve this every year. Article 4 is to set aside $25,000 for the purpose of providing matching grant opportunities for any grant that might arise during the upcoming fiscal year 2026. I do want to send a shout out to the many department heads, our town planner Liz Shea, the DPW, the police, fire. All the departments have really done a great job of bringing in grant money from the state and federal sources, and this $25,000 seed money allows them to jump on grants if anything become newly available in the coming year. So again, it's routinely approved. And then Article 5, which will be part of the consent agenda, is to approve $20,000 for the costs of the annual St. Patrick's Day Parade. And I'm sure most of you who are watching this were probably at the St. Patrick's Day Parade this year. It was a huge crowd. And this takes care of overtime and details of public safety officials, our fire and police, mostly the police, who do a great job of securing the safety for everyone in the parade and for all the spectators. So as I said, those 5 articles will be considered our consent agenda. I will be asking the Finance Committee to make one motion to approve all 5 articles, and then we'll ask the voters in the audience to take one vote to approve those 5, and then we'll move forward with the next articles. So the next article is probably going to be the one that will be most discussed, is Article 6, the establishment of the Residential Waste Pickup and Hauling Enterprise Fund. Scott, I'll hand this off to you. You can explain this Article number 6 immediately precedes Article number 7, which is the town operating budget. They're both directly related to each other, and maybe you can kind of tee this one up for us and tell us what it's all about.
So Article 6 takes the one line item that is currently in the budget. It is our waste hauling expense line item. And currently there's about $1.2 million in that line item that goes towards paying for curbside pickup, residential curbside pickup. And that cost has just continues to grow every year. In the past 5 years, it's grown well beyond 50%, almost 56%. So it's very difficult to control, and as that grows, it it takes away from other parts of the budget. We only have, consider the budget just a pie, and the departments all are a slice of that pie. And the line items are also a slice. And as this one grows, it has to come from somewhere else, especially at that rate. Most cities and towns around us recognized this many years ago, that the only way to really handle this properly and responsibly is to treat it similar to how we treat sewer and water. That it's a service, and it's a service we want to continue to provide, but that service we have to charge a fee for. And what this would do would establish a mechanism for us to charge an annual fee or a quarterly based fee for curbside pickup. Really, everything else with curbside pickup would remain the same. And it took us a while to get to this point. There's a lot going on in the budget this year. This is one factor and one issue, and I think most people probably remember we started this topic and this discussion a year ago at town meeting. And
I was going to say, this has been on the selectmen's agenda and on your agenda for not just the last 2 months. You've been talking about this for about 2 years.
Yes, and there's a lot of eyes that have been on this. We had a working group that has been working quite hard on this for the past year plus. There's members of the Board of Selectmen on this working group, members from the Finance Committee, members from the School Department, members of the Board of Health. Internally, we have all of our finance staff working on this. And also as it relates to the bigger picture of our overall operating budget. There's some serious concerns we had going into this year that are going to still be here next year. This isn't sort of a way to fix everything. This is just a way to take care of one item that continues to take away from other services for the town.
Meaning that since trash has gone up by over $500,000 in the last 5 or 6 years, if you want to keep a balanced budget and keep level services and still pay for 100% of trash, that means you have to cut from other departments, and you just
Correct.
feel like you really can't be cutting no more.
No, and we'll talk about that with the operating budget. Is we asked for a level service budget this year, and level service, we were already providing level service for the past few years, and with no increases to staff. As a matter of fact, several of the departments are probably working understaffed, and will continue to do so and continue to do the best they can, but this would further exasperate that if we don't remove it from the budget. And like I said, surrounding towns have all recognized this and dealt with this many years ago. I think if you look at the communities, Whitman and Weymouth and Rockland, Hanson, Holbrook, Brockton, they've all have it as a separate fee. We're probably the last town around that hasn't done it. We've been able to get by and been able to provide that service, but unfortunately,
I haven't been able to find another town that hasn't already gone to a fee structure. In fact, Hanson, I believe, doesn't even offer municipal trash.
no, there are some towns. Hanson's one. I think Plymouth is another one. Duxbury. They have a transfer station that for a fee you can bring stuff to the transfer station, and for a fee you can buy bags that you bring, special bags that you bring to that transfer station. Some towns, Holbrook, for instance, is totally privatized, and you work through a hauler that has been contracted through the town, but you deal direct with them.
So Article 6 actually really does two things, right? It sets up, it just creates another budget line item, an enterprise account.
Yes.
Much like you said, we have a water enterprise account, we have a sewer enterprise account, we have a golf course enterprise account where they take in their fees and pay their expenses. This would be basically a trash enterprise account. So that's the first thing that this article would do, just to create the account. But the second thing it does is that it actually pays for everyone's fee for next year.
Yeah,
correct?
so we're actually funding the enterprise with $1 million, $1.2 million. And this will pay. This is so to ease the transition as we go forward. We realize that this is difficult and it's in a big change, for the citizens. And we also realize that in the past, 34 years ago and 17 years ago, there had been overrides, specifically operational overrides, because of these same issues with trash. So the town has had this happen before on 2 different occasions, and they chose to have an override to pay for it. And that override, over those 2 overrides, they actually come to about $1.2 million.
But you're not recommending an override this year.
We do not want to, the override would only kick the can, so to speak. We do not recommend that this year. I think this is one issue that should be taken care of appropriately, like every other city and town did it. We should recognize it appropriately. But because we do realize it's another fee, it's not going to, you're not going to get a reduction in your taxes when we do this. You'll eventually be getting a fee, but our plan was to phase this program in. So it's actually 100% funded through free cash. And just a quick explanation on what free cash is for those who don't understand that. Last year we made predictions on revenue, and we set a budget. And where we did well on the budget and did not spend everything that was budgeted comes back to the town in the form of free cash. Where our revenue collections exceeded our revenue projections, that comes back to the town. So last year's projections would ultimately be the free cash that we're talking about using.
So it's unexpected extra revenue and less than expected expenses. So you end up with extra money, and like the state budget does, and like every town budget does, and frankly every family's budget does. So this is money that's left over, usually, and we're hopeful it's a positive amount.
It's always been a positive
It has
amount.
been,
Yep.
and that's considered, it's called free cash.
They call it, yes, and again, it's taxpayer money. It's your money. It's not, it's not free. But
some of it came from, you were selling some properties, so that
there's
that
different things
one-time
that
revenue
create that one-time revenue. But it is good work on the department heads, not to be responsible with their budgets. It's very difficult for me to sit here today and predict expenses and costs and overtime and for all the departments to do that, to set their budgets for what's going to be essentially a year from now.
Yeah.
And so we do the best we can, and then we try to make sure that we're conservative so we don't run into a problem. And some years we have good amount. This year I think we had over $3 million. Some years, I think one year we had under $1 million.
Well, while we're talking about that budgeting and the planning that you guys have been utilizing over the last several years, we're very fortunate you've been able to build up the free cash amount. So you do have some flexibility in our budget. But you also have successfully built up our stabilization fund. Could you just tell the people home what the stabilization fund is all about?
Yeah, so the stabilization fund's also known as the rainy day fund. And from time to time, and I think we probably did it back in 2020, we put a good amount in there. So that amount is roughly $3.8 million right now. And that's looked at as a percentage of what our operating budget would be, less some exclusions. And you want to keep it somewhere around that 5% mark, which is where we're at. We're a little, we're in a very good position with that. And the idea of having that money is, when you come in through these tough times, that you can use that to help get through. We don't use it lightly. We didn't use it in I think the past 2 town meetings I've come and I've said that we've done some creative budgeting using some one-time funding sources that we don't typically like to use for our budgets, but we've not touched the stabilization. We do have some recommendations to use some of it this year, and we'll talk about that when we get to the capital plan, which I think is a good place that if you are going to use it, to look at some projects that you really, really can't put off. You can't defer, and that would make it for a good time to use it. And like I said, we can get into that when we talk more about capital. But I think as far as the waste, the residential waste pickup program goes, again, I think that, the plan that working group had come up with was a long-term plan to ease everybody into it. So nothing changes if you're a consumer. If you're at home, if your trash day is Monday, it's still going to be Monday.
Same barrels.
Barrels are going to be the same. The rules are the same as far as what goes in each barrels. The contractor is the same. We still have a contractor with Boston Carting. So nothing changes on that end. There were options that we looked at that would have changed that dramatically, but we chose that this option seemed to be the best option. Year one, like we said, this program will go into effect July 1 of this year. Up until July of the following year, there'll be absolutely no change. But that following year,
Because no one's paying a bill.
no one's paying a bill. But the following year, the town will commit to subsidizing it again and pay 75%. So that first year that the homeowners will see a quarterly bill, it'll
Be about $25.
yeah, it'd be about $25 per household. We do have a program for seniors. So the senior 70 and over, if you're on the deed of that house and you're 70 and over, you'll pay half.
So a 50% discount for seniors who are 70 or
It'll
over.
be like
who own the
$12 a
property.
quarter.
Right. Well, that's good.
And then the year after that, the commitment from the town is to subsidize it at 50%.
Okay.
And then the year after that, the town will subsidize it at 25%. So it really won't be until roughly 5 years from now before you see the full effect of it.
So the projections are 5 years from now, when the town's residents are paying the bill, it's going to be about $100 a quarter.
Correct.
Right. And one of the questions I had received was, the money that's collected from this trash bill, can it be used to subsidize other departments, or is it only for trash?
It's only for trash.
So if trash costs go up or down, you would adjust the trash bills.
So the selectmen on an annual basis will set the fee, and it'll be based upon expenses from the year before. And it'll if in fact, and in my guess, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but just looking at the way things have gone historically, unless tonnage drops, which is one of the big drivers here, or recycling becomes a commodity again, which is another big driver here, cost of the recycling, it's not likely that the rate will go down unless, as a community, we find ways to do better. On that, I do want, in the fall to put together probably a working group or a community group that will sort of look at ideas to help, educate everyone on what is driving our costs and how can we do better on tonnage and weight and recycling. And
you've had a couple of public forums. You had a public forum at the senior center. You had a public forum at the library, so where people could come ask questions. And I know they went pretty well, very informative. I wanted to also note that there's nothing changes to people who own commercial property or people who own properties with 4 or more units. Even though they're paying the same type of tax bill, they don't get trash pickup service, which has always been an inequity in the grand scheme of things, but it's just been something that was the way it's been. So as it is right now, like for example, I own my law office building with my brother. We pay a tax on that, real estate taxes, but we don't get trash pickup, so we pay private services for a dumpster. That will continue to be the same.
Correct.
Same thing if I owned a 4-family or more, I still pay my own private, I already pay a bill. And a resident who has a 1-family, 2-family, 3-family that they own, they would pay the trash fee per unit.
Correct. It would be based per, so if you have a 3-family, you're going to get 3 separate bills.
Right, much like your taxes were higher because you had a 3-family versus a 1-family, whatever. But you can also, a resident can opt out of the town's program if they can find a way to do it cheaper.
Yeah,
basically.
well, they can find a way to do it more expensive if they like.
Yeah, if it's something more effective for them.
And we did look around. There are some communities, I think Hanson was one of them, that we talked to some folks there that, like I said, their only option there is to buy a bag or go to the transfer station and bring it there, and you have to buy an expensive sticker. From what I'm understanding, they pay close to $600 a year. I think I talked with somebody in Plymouth, and it was about the same rate for a private hauler to come to their house. And obviously, it's going to be less expensive because we have a contract for someone to do the whole town, so it's economies of scale.
So this plan, the acceptance of Article 7 and then Article 6, and then the acceptance of the operating budget in Article 7 will basically preserve level services for police, library, fire, school, DPW, senior center. It'll then segregate the trash cost into this separate bill, and the projections are right now that residents will pay $0 for all of next year, would pay a total of about $100 for the second year, $200 for the third year, $300, and then $400, right?
Right. Yeah, 70 and over will pay
And half of that. Okay. And while we're talking about, before we get to this operating budget, one of the things I think that's really killing a lot of the local towns is the real decrease in state local aid. Can you talk about that for a sec?
Yeah, we rely on state aid. A good amount of it we rely on for the educational portion too. And over the past couple of years, it really it hasn't decreased, but it's not increasing proportionally.
Right.
It increased, I think, about under 2% last fiscal year. The projections for the upcoming budget year are putting it at somewhere around 1.5, 1.6%. We haven't seen their final budget numbers. We don't expect it to increase. We'll be happy if it stays at that. And it's very perplexing. So we have our Chapter 70 that goes to the schools, and we have unrestricted government aid that comes to the towns for us to use towards, budgetary things. And then we have Chapter 90 money that goes towards the roadways. Mm-hmm. And the Chapter 90 money for the roads has been sitting around $400,000. It's just, it cost $1 million to do a mile of road, or over $1 million to do a mile of road. We have, 60-something miles of road here to do. And the DPW does a really good job with what they have. We've done some Kickstart programs. We borrowed some money to get some streets done. We were very fortunate over the last few years that we parlayed our recovery plan act money, our opera funds, and we did a lot of roadways with that. We did a lot of storm drainage with that. We're very fortunate. That money's gone. The perplexing part with the state is that their gambling revenues are up this year. Their receipts on the millionaire tax are up this year. They set them lofty projections on their other tax collections, and they didn't hit their projections, but they still hit high projections where they're actually they're up. The state's doing fine, mm-hmm. but they're spending it on other things other than the cities and towns, and it's very vexing to me, and I'm not really sure why.
Well, to your point. It was brought up, and I jotted down some notes from one of your forums. Almost every city and town around us for this year is in a budget crisis also, but they're opting to go for a budget override. Duxbury asked for $5.8 million for their override. Hanson is $3 million. Norwell's $4.1 million override. Hanover, $3.5 million. Whitman, $2.5 million override. Milton, $9.5 million override, because they're running into something similar. And like you said, they've already gone to the trash fee-based system, so that's not something they can try to implement now. They can only ask for an override or start slashing services. As you and I talked about, government's a little bit different than a private business, because government doesn't make things, government provides services. So should it be necessary? We have to decide where to cut. Do you reduce your police force? Mm-hmm. Do you have bigger class sizes? Do you close the senior center or the library? None of those are great options. But kudos to you and the Selectmen and the Finance Committee for coming together with a proposal that is up for now the residents at town meeting to review, and if they want to approve it, great. If they don't approve it, if they don't approve the trash proposal, what happens then?
We will regroup. I mean, we have a plan. We're not, that the $1.2 million that we're allocating this year to subsidize the program, we'll use, and we'll use that to pay for the program within the budget. We'll allocate it that 1.2 of free cash towards the budget to carry us through this year. We won't be able to offer this next year likely in the same form. So I don't know. Like I said, I think we'll regroup. That working group that I had met before or talked about that was meeting on this before, I think is going to continue to be a working group. It'll probably become an official committee anyways, because we do have other budget issues that we're going to have to address, and we're going to have to make some real hard decisions next year. This is just going to make it even harder. The selectmen have been, committed to finding different ways to work to save money for the town. We've unloaded properties that we shouldn't be holding on to, which just generates some one-time revenue, but it's great and we need it, and there's no sense in sitting on these properties. They've been, very aggressive in looking at budgets this year and looking at within our own budgets on whether it's town hall or not, but are there places that we can be saving by outsourcing? Are there places that we're wasting because we brought people in during COVID and maybe we don't need those services anymore? So we're looking at everything that we can. This is one thing and one of many topics that we can address right now to help us make some decisions for next year.
So no easy answers, but again, I do thank you for the amount of effort you guys have put in, guys and men and women on the Selectmen, Finance Committee, and yourself, and all your financial officers in town. I know there's been a lot of meetings, and you've been working on this literally every month for the last 2 or 3 years. I mean, remember discussions, like I said, about this issue last year, and it was on the warrant last year.
It was our cliffhanger.
Right, but well, let's move on though to Article 7, which is the operating budget. And people at home who want to get into the details of it, the operating budget is attached to the end of the warrant. And if you'd like to get a copy of the warrant, you can either go on to the Abington website, abingtonma.gov, and you can download it or review it there, or you can call the town clerk's office, Leanne Adams, at 781-982-2112, and she can mail you a copy, or you can stop by Town Hall and just pick up a copy. But the operating budget obviously lists all the salaries and expenses for every single department in town, and as you mentioned, you were able to somehow finagle it so it's a balanced budget.
Yes, it was a very difficult year, and and I encourage, and obviously it's not necessarily practical, I do encourage everybody to, try to watch Finance Committee meetings as we prepare for the budget season. It is an opportunity to hear from each and every department head who will come in and they will explain, what their needs are, what they feel would help enhance the services, or even like, this year they all came in with, look, we understand you're asking for level service. These are the things that we really could use to make sure that we're doing a good job for the town. However, realizing that this is what we propose. We probably had over $4 million in requests, budgetary requests that we did not include in the budget.
Because you couldn't.
Because we couldn't do it.
It's not there.
We used, we're using one-time funding this year. Like I said, there's free cash that we're using in different ways to balance the budget. There's free cash that we're using for the trash program. There's some
free cash for the capital plan.
Free cash in the capital plan, and then there's also that request to use some stabilization funds within the capital plan. It's not optimal, and but again, we found a way that we can do and provide the services that the town needs, and that the town deserves this year, without asking for an override. Again, some folks were, when we had these forums on the trash discussion, saying, well, isn't this like an override? And I'm like, nope, this is not. It's unfortunately, we won't be returning money to, or giving you any tax breaks, but this is a good way to deal with an issue, but it's also a way to get us through another year.
Well, it's funny, you mentioned it was 17 years ago. where we had an override. It was framed as for trash, but it really, if you go back to the history of it, both the overrides for trash 17 years ago, 34 years ago, were really intended to preserve the other services at their service level, so that they didn't have to cut police, fire, schools, senior center, and said, will you pay more for your trash? And both times the town said yes, and they did it in the form of an override. Here we are 17 years later, and it's the same situation, trying not to decimate all the other departments because of the increasing, really just dramatically increasing cost of trash. So will you pay for trash with this fee-based system? And oh, by the way, you've done some pretty good advanced planning where we've been able to put together some money aside to pay for that increased cost for next year for all the residents, and then portions of it moving forward over a 4 or 5 year period. So it's a question, though, that the voters of Abington have to make a decision. Is this good planning for you? Or the town's not obligated to provide trash service. I think you have obviously expressed a desire to continue to provide the exact same services that you're getting now, the exact same barrels, the exact same way your trash gets picked up. And that will happen if people do support Article 6 and 7. Yep. But we ask for any questions that come up, that'd be great.
Yeah. And, some of the other drivers that we have that are affecting our budget is, our healthcare expenses have gone up. We, continually to work towards trying to find better solutions for that. We're actually, each year we're looking at other groups. We're looking at the Mayflower Group. We're looking at the GIC Group. We're looking at Maya. So we're trying to find ways that we can save. We actually are instituting some internal changes where we'll offer some higher deductible plans that will save both the town and the employees money. And we're trying to do some wellness programs which will help, help healthier employees. Pension liability, our pension expenses continue year after year. We have to pay into that, but that'll be paid off in approximately 2030. When that happens, that does free up some money. Mm-hmm. So it seems like it's far away, but it's not. We'll be talking about the FY27 budget right after town meeting. So, we have the same things that everybody else feels at home. We have our, utility costs and our other economic factors that affect us. We are trying to make sure that we can retain. We have some great employees, whether it's, town hall, police, fire, DPW, school department. And we want to be competitive and we want to keep them. And there's cost factors in that. So beyond that, we're allowed, and typically we can raise our taxes, and that's our main source of revenue, but only up to 2.5% per year.
Right.
Which
but when the cost increases are going at 5 or 6%,
it's very difficult to keep services where we, at a level state, and to compound that, you try to rely on new growth, which would be, additional housing or buildings, or whether it's commercial, residential, and that's just been very flat. We're not seeing it. Most of the town is, there's a good amount of it is built out. Areas that aren't built out are still are wet and not buildable. We run into all sorts of other issues. So with that being flat, and it's very difficult. I think the work of the finance committee, the work of the selectmen, the work of the department heads to put this budget forward. I'm very pleased with the work that they all did, and now it's up to the voters to make their decisions.
Yeah, and I don't want to simplify it, but I'm a taxpayer in Abington also, and no one likes to see large increases in taxes. We all kind of, I think, expect there's always going to be a 2.5% increase or so every year. But what you have put together is a plan where, yes, you'll see the 2.5% increase, but you're not going to do an override like other towns around us are doing. And you are going to see a trash bill be implemented, but there's going to be no cost to it for the first year and only 25% for the second year and things like that. So it's kind of a soft landing for us this year. And I know you're going to have very similar issues to attack for next year, and you're going to, like you said, you'll be working on that as soon as this town meeting's over.
Yeah, that's correct. And again, for those who out there first time watching don't know what an override is, the override would mean that we would ask for monies beyond that 2.5%.
Yeah,
And
and it's
the
permanent increase.
right, and that's there's a method to doing that. It's not just as simple as us going beyond it. We have to ask town meeting. We have to explain why. Town meeting has to vote it with a majority vote, a 2/3 majority vote, and then it has to be proved at a ballot also.
Right.
So it's something that most towns do not want to do. We don't want to do it at all, and that's why we're not proposing it this year. But many towns are in the same situation because they're all facing the same things that I just described to you. We're all dealing with the same issues, and we're right up against it. I mean, at some point, we'll have to decide as a community what we want our town government and town services to look like.
I was thinking about this the other day. Other towns around us who are all going for the overrides must be saying, how's Abington doing this? How are they not doing an override? Everyone else is underwater, basically. So, I guess to that end, thank you. And I wish you luck because I know your job is not an easy job. No town manager, town administrator, I can say, enjoys his job every day. But we thank you and the Selectmen and the Finance Committee. And if you're interested in being on the Abington Finance Committee, we do have 2 vacancies right now. It's usually a 9-member Abington residents, completely volunteers, and they basically review all of the budget proposals that are put forth by the Board of Selectmen and by the town manager. So they're a separate resident-controlled board that reviews everything, and they're the ones that then make the recommendation at town meeting for each article. That they're gonna recommend, yes, pass this article, no, don't pass this article. We call it passing over this article. So if you're interested in getting on the Finance Committee, you can contact me, Sean Riley, as town moderator, or you can contact Scott at the town offices, and we can get in touch with you, and we'll see what we can do to kind of get a few more people on the Finance Committee. I want to thank the members that are on that Finance Committee right now for all the time they put into it. Let's move on, though. We're going to get rolling because people are getting bored of watching us on their television. So Article 8 is the capital plan, which you've already mentioned. So we have the operating budget, which basically is the revenue, the money that pays for the services, for the employees, for all the different things we need, the expenses. The capital plan are basically investments in equipment and improvements to the town of Abington. We're showing on the screen right now the first part of it, which is the police department and the Department of Public Works. So anything there you wanted to highlight?
No, I think it's stuff that we typically see every year. We buying, whether it's dump truck or a cruisers, or sometimes we're doing some upgrades to a building. These are things that especially the buildings and our equipment. We have to take care of that. These are our biggest investments, our biggest assets, and it's important that we make sure that we have the tools, I guess, to provide you the services that we're providing.
And I think one question always comes up about the police cruisers. Why are we buying police cruisers every single year? And that's because you're rotating rotating them in. And I think the example that I think someone on the Finance Committee brought up was good, that you have a police officer on an 8-hour shift who's driving around town all day or going wherever it goes. He doesn't then park in his driveway at home for the remaining 16 hours. When the shift changes, someone else gets in that cruiser and they're driving. So it's really, that vehicles are out there 24 hours a day.
Yeah, I mean, we've actually got they have a program. We try to assign certain vehicles so they're not 24 hours, but sometimes they could be doing 2 shifts a day. But they do. The miles add up
Quicker than
quick.
a family vehicle does, is what my
Significantly
point.
quicker.
Yeah.
They take more abuse for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But it is important. We have quite a few of them. We have, at any given point in time, we hope to have, 3 or 4 vehicles on the road, and then backup vehicles for obvious reasons. And this year would be the first year that we're actually looking into starting a lease program that will actually end up saving the town money over a period of time. And it'll have us with newer cruisers that are hybrid, that use up significantly less fuel,
Yes, good.
And because they're newer and on a rotating basis, they significantly less maintenance costs.
Great.
So we're going to try it out for at least a couple of years, maybe 3 years, and see if we do see the savings that we expect to see. Then it'll probably be a program that will continue on.
Before we turn the page, under the Department of Public Works, there is an item MS4 Stormwater Project, which would be paid for by borrowing that $225,000. Just briefly, MS4 Stormwater, if you can remind people what that is.
Yeah, so there's requirements. They start at the federal level and they make their way down to the state level and come to us. And it's really about, it's protecting our rivers, lakes, streams, drinking water, our water sources, and mostly it's through what you see on the roadways, catch basins, certain filtration systems. This particular one that we'll build will be built over at Arnold Park, and there'll be one over here over at the Town Hall complex. These ones are sort of bioretention basins, and these also have an educational component, which was a requirement of this MS4 program that we're, again, required by federal and state statutes and regulations to follow. These will be, it will give the public an opportunity to see why we do this and the advantages of doing capturing stormwater, capturing runoff from parking lots, streets, sidewalks, and then as you capture it, we clean it and
let it percolate back into the ground?
Yeah, we let it get back into the ground water, but in a cleaner, safer way.
Great. Being good stewards, but also following the federal mandates.
Right.
You've got to come up with the money to do that, which you've done. Turning the page on the capital plan, so we have sections for the water department, the school department, the Strawberry Valley Golf Course, and the town manager's request. Water department, all those items there are paid out from the water department's earnings. So when you pay your water bills or your sewer bills, those departments keep those monies in their enterprise funds, and they use that to reinvest into, in the water department's case, where they're upgrading technology and cleaning filters and doing repairs and a lot of things there. Almost $1 million worth of work proposed by the water department, all paid from water department revenues. The school department has their annual laptops, much like the police cruisers. They keep rotating them in and out, so all the students have the laptops. Strawberry Valley Golf, they've been doing a great job up there with just improvements, and they're going to continue their improvements, again, using the fees generated by the golfers themselves who pay the greens fees. And then you have a couple of town manager requests to kind of take care of a couple of items that you don't want to postpone, things that kind of either need immediate attention or that you determine will be a good investment to make sure we spend this money on. So I know you have the town hall building repairs and some HVAC issues, both in the Cotter room of the town hall and in the library. What's going on there?
So the Cotter room HVAC system, that's the main meeting room where we hold all of our selectmen meetings, finance committee meetings, planning board meetings. We also have it as a backup shelter and warming station now that we have a generator that was paid for with a grant. We had to replace the HVAC system in there, and we're actually using money from old articles. What our town accountant looks through on an annual basis to try to find old articles that were approved for some whatever project at past town meetings.
Right.
And those articles sometimes have a balance to them. When we ask for some article, we may ask for something here. We assume we get our best guess estimates. We have professional estimates on project costs, and sometimes they come in lower.
Yeah.
Which is nice. We want to make sure that they don't come in higher, so there's usually a factor on there. Again, we're doing these projects are sometimes a year away from when we actually are allocating the money, so we try to take economic factors in and have a 2-3% contingency. And when that money, when we don't use that money and it's left over, this is how we turn it back into the community.
And again, the town meeting votes to take that money and reallocate it to something else. You can't do it unilaterally.
Nope.
Town meeting we decide how to spend your money. And I know you're also doing that in the operating budget back in Article 7. I think part of the funding sources are from accounts that had leftover balances that you guys were able to locate, clean out, which you do regularly, but this was an effort to kind of really take care of that issue this year. So again, trying to spend money and get more than $1 for every dollar. Moving on to Article 9, the community preservation budget. This has been kind of a very popular part of town meeting and part of the whole town process. The Community Preservation Committee, I think people now around town have seen the great things that are happening, reinvesting the community preservation fees into the town. And like the capital plan, they take a vote, they set up a proposal, but town meeting has to basically vote to approve it. So it's all there as printed and shown in the article. Some work with open space with the Connector Trail, the Griffin Dairy Fence, Green Street Playground, Island Grove Snack Shack, Arnold Park Street Hockey, softball field updates. They put money aside for historical resources, for housing, affordable housing. So a lot of good things happening there. Usually not a lot of debate with this article, but if there's questions, you can certainly bring them up at town meeting. So that would be a vote of approval by the town for Article 9, I think I said. And then we'll move on to Article 10. Let's see. I have to adjust my my laptop here to get to the next page. Article 10 is the payment of sick leave buyback, and that is for 2 water department employees, and it's $50,000 to be contributed by the town of Abington and really the Abington Water Department, and $50,000 by the Rockland Water Department. But again, just has to get approved at town meeting.
Correct.
Article 11, opioid settlement. It's a housekeeping article. We're transferring $106,000 and change into this opioid settlement account. Can you just speak briefly what that is?
Yeah, on that first year of the, and I think it's probably been 3 or 4 years now, at least 3 years, the first year when we started receiving the opioid settlement funds, which were funds from a class action lawsuit against some big pharma companies because of the way that they sold or recommended the use of their particular drugs, causing addiction problems. The first year of the lawsuit, we received $106,000 plus or minus, but they did not, the legislature did not give us a mechanism on where we could place that money and how we could use that money. So it really just went into the general fund. As subsequent years went, they adjusted the legislation, and now we're allowed, I think we set up the fund last year, or I think probably last year we set up the fund. This $106,000 is that money that we actually had gotten on that first year or so,
Right.
or prior to the fund being set up. So it's an accounting thing. We're moving it, we're taking it from our free cash and putting it into that fund.
I want to thank the members of the Opioid Settlement Committee, again, Abington volunteers, who helped decide how to spend that money to benefit the families and the people who are in need, who have been dramatically affected by the opioid crisis in Abington. So if you're interested in either serving on that committee or attending their meetings, again, you can call Scott's office, Scott, 982-2100, and he can tell you how to get in touch with them. Their meetings are also on cable TV. Moving on to Article 12, 13, and 14, and 15. These are all kind of some real estate articles. 12 is the town's basically authorizing expenditure of $1,000 to basically take care of the Hillside Cemetery on Randolph Street, right down near the Holbrook town line. This is an old private cemetery, but it has the remains of over 30 war veterans, all the way back from the Revolutionary War, World War I, Spanish-American War, World War II. And the private families that own this have all pretty much either died off or no longer live in town.
They're living there.
Yeah, some of them are there.
Not living there.
Right. So this is just kind of a quick vote where the town would have the $1,000 available. You're not responsible to operate the cemetery, but basically just to kind of maintain it.
Yeah, we would take over care and custody of it. And again, it's worthwhile. It's amazing how much history is in there.
Yeah.
But no, we will not be selling lots or anything like that.
It's amazing. People drive by it every day and don't even know
Don't
it's
even know
there,
it's
but
there.
it's a part of history going back into the 1800s, actually, maybe even earlier than that. Article 13 is the acceptance of a gift of just over 20 acres from Larry Truffin and the Truffin family. This is just over 20 acres that is adjacent to the Strawberry Valley Golf Course, and it's to the south of Ashland Street, behind the houses on Ashland Street where Larry Truffin lives. And this is a gift that he's making. Most of the land is going to be actually combined with the golf course, so the Strawberry Valley Golf Course. They may be able to reconfigure it, have some longer holes there in the next couple of years. Anything to be said on this
Yeah,
article?
no, it's great. It's a nice piece of open space that would add and enhance to Strawberry Valley, and I think it's it's very generous of the Truffant family, and we're looking forward to it.
So we'll take a quick vote. You need a 2/3 vote for that when you accept a gift of land like that. Go to Article 14. It's the getting approval to allow the Board of Selectmen to demolish the building at 22 Bedford Street, which is it's actually part of, or when the town bought the Strawberry Valley Golf Course back in the 80s, I believe it was, there was this house on Route 18, which is actually on part of the golf course land. And the proposal here is to demolish that property, right?
Correct. Yeah, again, the house it's an older house, and there's currently somebody who's in there renting it, but as a town, we don't want to be landlords. It's very minimal, the amount of revenue compared to the upkeep costs. And Strawberry Valley, they would like to actually use that to make some improvements of their course also. So I think this is probably our the best bet for us. It's just very simple. We'll put it out to bid, have it taken down, removed, brought back to its natural state, and let it become part of the golf course.
Alrighty, then moving on to the next article, it's to approve, basically allow the selectmen to move forward with the reconfiguration or the reconstruction of the Hancock and Chestnut Street intersection. That's the intersection at the bottom of the hill on Hancock Street. It's the site of a lot of accidents in Abington. It's a dangerous intersection, and up on the screen you can see what the design is. It's going to become a roundabout, much like what is now in place on the far end of Chestnut Street at the Brockton and North Quincy Street line. They have a roundabout there that seems to be working very well, avoiding accidents where people it makes people slow down and yield to others. So this article simply just allows you to proceed with whatever needs to be done as far as land takings and easements and such.
Yeah, this is fully funded through Mass DOT, and they're actually doing the legwork on the layout of this. The layout will require them to take some land from property owners in that general area. They're all well aware of it. They've already been in discussions. This is sort of just the final piece of it that the selectmen can take, officially sign off on the taking of those layout, and they can start the work.
And do you know when they propose to start the work if this article is approved?
No, I think I'd leave that up to John Stone to answer. Because
He's the director of the DPW.
Yeah, and the only reason I don't want to say is because we're talking about so many different projects, and he puts out federal fiscal year. And the federal fiscal year is different than our fiscal year, so I don't want to get anybody's hopes up.
I'm sure there'll be plenty of signage going up.
We will address that at town meeting, though.
Okay. Article 16, moving right along, the South Shore Vocational Technical High School Agreement Amendment. This is, again, another housekeeping article with the South Shore VoTech, as a lot of people know it, located in Hanover. Great school that services Abington, Cohasset, Hanover, Hanson, Norwell, Rockland, Situate, and Whitman, and the town of Marshfield has recently joined in. So, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, the current regional agreement, or the former regional agreement, basically said that all those towns split the cost of running the school, and if the school borrows money, we split the cost of borrowing the money based on the percentage of kids coming from each town to the school. And especially when it pertains to borrowing money, it locked you in. If they were borrowing for 30 years and Abington had, let's just say, 13% of the school population, we paid 13% of that bond for 30 years. The amendment, now that Marshfield's joined in, they had an opportunity to amend it, and it basically says that they recalculate each town's percentage based on the ebbs and flows of the amount of students that you send in each year. Do I have that right?
Correct.
All right, so that it's basically a fairer way, and it doesn't.
Well, it was very. It was so important that we actually held a special town meeting to try and address this issue just the Monday before Thanksgiving. And unfortunately, we were not able to get a quorum,
Yep.
which we can discuss, I guess, in depth later.
It's coming up.
But the importance of it is, and luckily this did pass because the other towns within the district did
Got their
vote.
quorums
They got
and
their
voted.
quorums. Had it not passed, though, it would have been concerning to us because, like you said, we have other towns coming in, so our percentage is likely to drop, but we would have been locked in because we did vote to approve. The town voted to approve that project. In fact, the town is now also going to have to, at the ballots, make sure that they approve paying for the project.
Yep. The South
We
Shore
should
Road
talk
Tech.
about that.
Yes, we
yes,
should.
The South Shore Tech School project. But this is a carryover. I think it's important that our vote goes on record. The other towns that were part of it did pass it. But again, it goes to the importance of our question later on being able to do the town's business when we need to do the town's business.
True. So this vote will basically kind of put Abington on the record as we support the amendment because we think it will benefit the taxpayers of Abington.
Correct.
Moving on to Article 17, and we'll get back to the ballot election
project
votes in the
yes.
project. Yeah. Article 17 is again, an establishment of another of a fund. This is a revolving fund as opposed to an enterprise fund about EV charging station maintenance. Tell us a little bit about this one, quick.
Yeah, so, I don't know if folks have noticed, but over by Town Hall and the library, we do have some town EV charging stations. They were put in with a grant. There is a maintenance fee to them. So far, I think they've only been in operation, for a short time, but we seem to be generating $700-800 a quarter. Like I said, it's only been in there for a short time. We hope that they do get more use. We're not looking, it would be great if we could make some money off them. But we do have other ones that are going to be popping up around town, again, put in with grants. However, we want to be able to put that money when it comes into a fund, and if there are maintenance fees, we're going to start a maintenance agreement. Right now, I think it's $1,000 a year for the maintenance agreement. This just gives us that ability to do that, and obviously you'll see that the spending limit is up only $10,000.
Great. So the EV charging stations go in without any tax dollars being spent, but yet we get revenue from anyone who plugs into it. They're paying the town for the use of that charging station.
Correct.
Great. And so this just allows you to take in the money and spend it to reinvest in those. Article 18 is a proposed new bylaw called the false alarm bylaw. There already is a bylaw in effect for fire department, fire alarm false alarms. This one is coming from the police department to address a concern that they've had a lot is false alarms for whether it be false burglary alarms or any sort of alarm that causes a response. And that's okay to have a burglar alarm and call the police, but what this is trying to address is the ones that have repetitive problems, maybe a defect in their system or employees who aren't paying enough attention to detail. So this addresses that, right?
Yeah, and again, it's more, like we said, commercial based. That's where the big issues are. But there are some organizations out there that we frequently get called to, and that will tie up services. I mean, you're going to send at least one patrol car there, but more likely you're going to try and have two. And if there's any concern when they get there may be a supervisor involved, tied up until they can decide whether or not there's something going on.
Right.
And, obviously we understand that sometimes mistakes happen. Sometimes somebody might forget to set the code or whatever. But what this is saying, we have people out there that it's happening once a month, once a week, once a shift. And that's not fair that they're tying up services like that. So this is just saying, and it's very progressive. It starts off with warnings. starts off with small fines. And it's basically saying, look, fix your systems. If you're not going to fix your systems, if you're going to continually call on us when, unnecessarily, then there's going to be a fine associated with it.
Right. So, like you said, so there's 3 warnings. You don't get a fine the very first time it happens.
No.
But if you're interested in reading over the bylaw, again, it's in the warrant. It's available at abingtonma.gov, or you can get one from the town clerk's office if you want to stop by or call. They'll mail one out to you. Moving on to Article 19, you just kind of alluded to it. This is a proposal to change the quorum for our town meetings. The proposal right now, it's we require to have 150 registered voters at the town meeting before we can start the meeting. And there's been a couple of times where that's been a problem. You mentioned our last special town meeting in the fall. We couldn't open the meeting because we didn't have enough people there. And it's been a concern of the selectmen and some of the other departments that what if, when we need to take some votes to authorize the expenditure or to get something done, what are we going to do? And so the proposal here is to reduce the quorum to 75 registered voters. Your thoughts on this article?
Yeah, I mean, I can't stress enough the amount of work that goes into putting any town meeting, whether it's a special town meeting or the annual town meeting, the amount of work from the Board of Selectmen, the amount of work, especially from the Finance Committee, who meets every Wednesday night, some nights until from 7 up until 10 o'clock. They've been known to meet on Saturdays if they've had to. Department heads that come in, and then the volunteers that actually work town meeting. There's a lot of people that are involved to try and get what is once a year the most important night for us to ask the town, what do you want us to do? What do you want your services to be? Will you help us set the budget? And here's some programs and projects we want to do going forward. So it's very frustrating for all those involved when we don't get a quorum. And like we said earlier, when we had an important issue, that was a special town meeting, which we don't do that lightly, but we have had one most falls that I've been here. So it's not a surprise that we do it. To be able to say, look, we just want to be able to get our business done. We want to be able to get started on time. I think this is a fair way to do it. We're still saying, we still want everybody who wants to come. We have room for...
There's no limit. There's no maximum number of people.
We have room
come.
for 750, and if I could fill the gymnasium with chairs if I have to, I'd be glad to do it. The more participation, the better this system of government works.
Undoubtedly. Yeah, I agree. And I know that you guys did a survey of local towns, and out of 15 local towns, 13 of them either had a quorum of between 0 and 100. I think 5 of them had 0. And I know I've talked to 2 moderators from those towns, and they said it was the best thing they ever did. They start on time, and people know they're going to start on time. So one of the concerns that was mentioned at the selectmen's meeting, there are some senior citizens who feel like they don't bother to go to town meeting because they're never sure it's going to start on time, and they don't want to be out late. And there's also parents who don't want to get a babysitter and find out that there's no quorum. So this basically would allow us to start that 75 people. We should be able to get that, but we're hoping for 375 people to show. But at least we can start at 7 o'clock. If this article passes, Article 19, it's a majority vote. And everyone that I've heard that has dropped it to 0, they aren't turning back. I know you're from Duxbury, right? And you're a 0 quorum, I believe.
I worked there.
Yes, that's right. You worked at Duxbury.
I was not a resident.
You're right.
But I live in Whitman, where we've actually only recently done some quorum changes over there.
Right.
But yeah, they had a 0 quorum, and we would have 600 people. I was working there 15 plus years, and they never ever had other than a packed house. So love to see that here. I think, and that's the nice part. Like we say, you can be sure at 75, you can be sure that we're going to be ready for business, and we're going to be ready to start on time, and that we won't waste your time.
I'm a member of the Massachusetts Moderators Association, so we have a lot of information go back and forth, and they said that everyone who has lowered their quorum has seen an increase in attendance for the reasons we just kind of enumerated. You can rely on the fact that it's going to start and you're going to be able to take action. And also, if you're cynical and you don't want a small group of people making a decision, then go to the meeting. And it's played out in such a way where people have seen an increase, towns have seen an increase in attendance. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's much better, much healthier for our democracy if we have more people in there as part of the debate and part of the vote. I understand where some people just can't make it to town meeting. I understand that, but there's a lot of good things going on in this town but we need your vote to let them move forward. So this is proposed by the Board of Selectmen, and it's up to the town residents to make that decision at town meeting. Let's move to Article 20. The next couple of articles are all zoning articles. Article 20 is the zoning article that establishes the accessory dwelling unit zoning bylaw, or the ADU bylaw, accessory dwelling unit. This is in response to a recent state law that was just enacted was intended to create more housing. There's a big shortage of rental housing in kind of smaller houses. This is addressing that. It basically requires towns to allow certain accessory dwelling units.
By right.
By right, right. With that, they don't have to go to the zoning board in most cases. They just have to get a building permit and have it inspected and have, correctly constructed and all, pay the fees and such. Accessory dwelling units in Abington already exist, but they're limited to in-law units where you have to have a relative living in the unit, whether it's the downstairs level or the room above the garage or the detached barn building. We already have that in place like a lot of other towns, but again, you're limited to only a relative can live in your house's accessory apartment. The state law now says get rid of the relationship requirement. Mm-hmm. Now you're allowed to rent to basically anybody. There's a lot more leeway, which can be a good thing for some people, bad thing. But this bylaw is Abington's, correct, again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but this bylaw was generated by the planning board after a public hearing and get a lot of input to try to put as many reasonable restrictions on the process as possible without violating the spirit of the law. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, if this bylaw doesn't get passed, then we just go by what the statute says, which is kind of wide open right now.
Right, right. Yeah, and really that's all it was. I mean, we have to do it. It's, again, we don't have an option. I wouldn't panic about it. I mean, there's states, and certainly I've talked to folks out in western part of the country who have actually done this, and it was done this way, in a thoughtful way, where they had some guidelines like we're proposing here, and when it's done that way in a thoughtful way, it actually works out very well. So that's really all this is. It's just saying that the state said, all right, you have to allow this. You can't allow it. You can't make people get a special permit for it, but you can impose reasonable regulations. Right. As far as, setback from neighbors' houses, requirements to maybe have your own water and sewer hookups, or,
right.
What are we going to do? Trash, you're going to have a separate barrel and you have to pay a separate fee.
I think one of the most important distinctions it also makes is that if you're converting, let's say you have a split level and you're going to make your bottom level a separate apartment, you just need a building permit to do that. Or if you have a garage or a detached garage and you want to convert the space above, so if it's an existing building that you're converting, you just need a building permit. If, however, you're going to enlarge your house to create this accessory dwelling unit, or if you're going to create a new outbuilding, a detached building, then you do need to get review. It's an abbreviated site plan review process by the planning board, and notices have to be given to the immediate neighbors. So a new building requires a different level of permitting, but a renovation of an existing building is something that the building department will oversee.
But it is a review. It's not a
prohibition,
and it's not a special permit.
Right. It's just to make sure that, neighbors can have some input as to where it's located or if any privacy issues, things like that. But yeah, that's the way the statute is written. It's very difficult for a town to say no.
Correct.
So then we move on to Article 21, which is directly related to Article 20 with the accessory dwelling units. It's updating existing portions of our zoning bylaw to take away the in-law apartment line item, which we called accessory apartments already. So under section 21A, 1A, you can see they've crossed that out, accessory apartments, because now we're not talking about in-law apartments anymore in Abington. We're talking about the new state law, accessory dwelling units. And accessory dwelling units would be allowed under the state law as of right in any zoning district that would allow a single-family house to be built either with as of right, which is a Y in the charter, yes, or if a single family is allowed by special permit in that zoning district, then an ADU is allowed as of right. So what this is doing is taking away the special permits out of the highway commercial, the central business district, and what we call the Muppet district, and changing those to no's. That new single family houses are not allowed to be built in the highway commercial or CBD or Muppet district, and therefore ADUs wouldn't be. And that's basically, as I heard the planning board hearing, it's intended to basically try to have our commercial zoned areas, have them developed commercially moving forward, but not to allow single families to stop being plopped into our commercial district, because that kind of goes against the goals of our zoning bylaw. So this is kind of a housekeeping article. Article 21 requires a 2/3 vote. I should mention Article 20, the ADU bylaw. Usually zoning articles require a 2/3 vote, but part of that new state law says that this ADU regulation, this new ADU bylaw in Article 20 only requires a majority vote. The remaining zoning articles, 21 through 25 or so, do require 2/3 votes. Nothing else to be said on that. Article 22 is just correcting a typographical error. While they had these other amendments going, they threw this one in to correct a typo so that the chart that shows up in the zoning bylaw actually matches the text that is published elsewhere in the zoning bylaw. Article 23 is correcting really a wording mistake. Sorry, I just flapped through that. Just deleting the phrase whichever distance is greater, because that's not what the state statute says. So we're trying to make our zoning bylaw consistent with state statutes. It's always, our zoning bylaw, the notices that go out have always been done according to the state statute, as we're required to do. The assessor's office and the zoning board and the planning board all do it that way. But for whatever reason, this language had been left over in our local zoning bylaw, and it's just a conflict, so they're just correcting that right now. Moving to Article 24, this is about ground-mounted solar panels. Our zoning bylaw currently speaks to roof-mounted zoning panels, and it also speaks to large solar arrays, but it didn't talk about small-scale ground-mounted solar arrays. So there was a proposal to try to tweak the bylaw, and this article is being recommended by the planning board to be passed over. Because they want to review this further, because there's some new regulations coming down, and I think this is something they're going to bring back to us at a future town meeting. But they are just recommending that they would rather not pass this revision and then try to revise it again. They're going to ask that you pass over this article, and then we'll look at it again in a following year. Article 25 is amending dimensional and density regulations. Again, this was submitted by someone from the building department. It was an idea. They had a public hearing, and again, the planning board is recommending that you pass over this article. They don't support this article, but because it was submitted as part of the public hearing process, it has to be published in the warrant for your consideration. Planning board will make the motion to pass over Article 25. And then Article 26 is always there to pay for snow and ice costs. It's something unique to New England. Well, not just New England, I guess the northern states. You want to talk briefly about
I
this?
bet some of those southern states that got snow this year
true.
didn't have a line item for it at all.
True.
Yeah, snow and ice, again, every year we, it's impossible to predict how much we're going to spend next year on snow and ice. So we typically have, I believe, $100,000 or $150,000 in our budget for it. We always go over that. And this year we're looking to use $200,000 from free cash to pay for what we went over. There is still a balance on it of approximately $500,000 that we'll address with if there is any funds left over at the end of the year, that we can do transfers with the selectmen and the finance committee, or they'll be picked up next year.
I don't know if you said it, but I just want to make sure people at home hear it. This is the only line item that the town's allowed to expend over what is set, because snow is such an unforeseen item that we don't know. We didn't have a lot of snow this past year, but there's always a cost to it, because frankly, even if there's not snow, I think one of the other problems is ice.
A lot of ice.
Yeah, so you're still sending the trucks out to every single street in town, usually more than once for these storms, to take care of it for safety purposes. So that's going to be, usually that article, snow and ice, is up towards the front. The way it happened, it's at the end of this warrant, so that'll be just a quick majority vote to approve it. And then we did want to talk about Saturday, April 26th is the town elections. There's a couple of spots where there are candidates running for election or re-election, but there's also a couple of ballot questions that we're asking residents to take a vote on. And what are those questions, Scott? We have the Sociovotech,
Sociovotech, and then charter changes.
basically confirming the charter changes that we approved at last year's town meeting. As you mentioned before, some of these are multi-step processes. So we had a charter review committee that worked for over a year and a half, did a great job trying to update our charter. We're required to look at our charter every 10 years to see what updates and revisions should be made to kind of, quote unquote, keep up with the times. Those revisions were approved at last year's annual town meeting, and now the last step is to put it on a ballot and have people vote yes or no to basically enact those charter changes. If you want any questions or information about that, you can certainly, again, call Town Hall, or you can look back at the video of last year's town meeting. And some of it was kind of a lot of housekeeping. Some of it was making things more efficient. It was as far as timetables. The Board of Selectmen will be henceforth become the Select Board. And again, it's a simple, quick vote. The Sociovotech ballot question is to authorize the town of Abington to borrow the money to pay for our share of the construction of the new school.
Well,
is that right?
It's to pay for it. The selectmen won't be borrowing the money. The district will.
Yep.
The district will assess us, and basically this says we are on the hook for this now.
Yeah.
The town approved the project. One way or the other, the town has to now pay the town's share of that project, and this is saying that we will pay for it in a debt exclusion. As opposed to us taking it out of that pie I was talking about earlier, because it's going to be, it's a sizable chunk to take out. There's information on the website still about this, what it's going to cost you, your average homeowner. But it was overwhelmingly approved. The town is in favor of it, and now it's time that we have to.
I think it was approved by every town in the.
It was a special election.
Yep.
There was a special election in January.
I think it was January.
Is that January?
And so those elections, the town elections, including those two ballot questions, are going to be held on Saturday, April 26th at the Beaverbrook Elementary School. Polls open at 8 in the morning. They go till 6 p.m. because it's just a local election. If you have any questions, or if you want to vote early, you'll be able to do so at the town clerk's office. Again, you can ask questions about voting and times and dates at 781-982-2112. Our town clerk, Leanne Adams, and her assistant town clerk, Barbara, are a wealth of knowledge. But hopefully you guys will all go out there and exercise your right to vote on April 26th, but also exercise your right to vote and to be heard at town meeting on Monday, April 7th, 7 o'clock at the auditorium at the Abington Middle High School. And again, please arrive early. We do have some ceremonial things we do at the start of town meeting. So again, it's important that we try to start at 7 because we have to run over the rules of the meeting. We have a dedication of the annual report. We also honor some of our deceased town employees. So as you're getting your seats, we'll try to get started, but I can't start until we can show that at least 150 people have checked in. If you do vote for the article that reduces the quorum to 75, that doesn't take effect till next year. So we need 150 plus to be there on April 7th to take care of the town business. A lot of good things to happen here, a lot of things to talk about and debate. I think, the budget's always the biggest thing to discuss because it affects everybody.
Yeah.
But if people want more information, where can they get that?
Well, certainly there's a lot of information on the website on these articles. There's a whole page dedicated to trash in that particular article. There's obviously this segment on ACAM. There are multiple we have all the finance committee meetings are on ACAM. There's selectmen meetings on there. So there are, a lot of different ways that you can find information, or stop by town hall over the next week if you'd like to, and we'd be happy to talk to anybody who has any questions.
And I will send a shout out and we will make a little announcement at the beginning of the meeting. This year, 2025, is the 250th anniversary of the historical town meetings that were held throughout Massachusetts in the year 1775, including right here in Abington. those town meetings were basically the start of the American colonies coming together to create a new democracy. And they stood up to the tyranny of the king, and it led into the American Revolution. And it was the strength of the local town meetings throughout Massachusetts, and then it spread through the colonies, that really kind of got that basically protection of our liberties going. And so we wanted to take a minute at our town meeting to acknowledge that history and to really share in the history, because moving forward now it's up to you to decide what happens for the next 250 years, or at least for the next year at this town meeting. So again, I encourage you. The New England town meeting has been described as the purest form of democracy, and it's a great opportunity. And if you have any questions before the town meeting, feel free to reach out to me, Sean Riley, or to Scott Lambiase, our town manager. There's, like you said, a ton of information online, and you can also watch videos of some of the prior town meetings or the Finance Committee meetings, the Board of Selectmen meetings, where a lot of these issues have been thoroughly discussed multiple times, so you can kind of get a little working knowledge before you come to town meeting. But we do encourage you all to be there, and again, if you can get there a little bit before 7, so you can just give them your name and address, and they can check you off, and you'll be allowed to enter into the auditorium. Anything else you want to wrap up, or?
No, I believe that's it. Again, as we mentioned earlier, we're always looking for volunteers.
Yeah.
Finance Committee has some openings now. That is a great place to learn a lot about what goes on in your town.
Yep.
And it's your town. The way that we operate, as you said, everybody has the ability to be involved and have a say in it. We have multiple committees. I would encourage anybody who's interested in finding out about them to reach out to me personally or reach out to Sean.
It can be frustrating running a government. Everyone says you want to run a government like a business. There's certain things by law you can't do from a government side that you would love to do or could do as a business. But there are a lot of good things that a government can do if the townspeople kind of get involved, be part of the solution, and kind of support what's going on. There's no one way to do anything, so we like to get different opinions from people. And I do want to thank and the residents of Abington who do go to town meeting. We always have very orderly and respectful town meetings, and it's a great tradition we have here in Abington. And I think people walk out of there feeling that they understood what they were voting for, and we move forward as a community. And it's a great community. I've lived here all my life, and I'm glad I do. So I think that's it. I want to thank Kevin Tocci from Abington Cam, who's producing this show for us, and all of you for tuning in to this. And I hope you'll kind of share some of the information with other residents, encourage them to mark their calendars for April 7th and be there at town meeting, so that we can address and talk about some of these issues, that which most affects you and your family or your neighborhood or your town. And together we can make some decisions for what we're going to take on for the year that's coming, starting on July 1st. So again, April 7th, Monday night, 7 o'clock. Doesn't matter what's on TV that night, come down to the town meeting. Thanks, Scott, for being here, all the time you put into this. I greatly appreciate it. And thank you again for tuning in to this town meeting review.